Okay, welcome to the first episode, Tales from a Disappearing City. First episode, got my good friend here, Ian, Blackmass Plastics. You all right, Ian?
Yeah, all good, all good.
Yeah, so this episode, we're just going to start off, I guess, talking about our early vinyl and record shop experiences. So what's your memories of like either going to your first record shop or like vinyl records, that sort of thing?
Well, first time I remember being in a shop, seeing a record in a shop, and thinking, "What is that? That looks amazing! I've got to have that."
Yeah,
Must have been in about 1977, 78,
right.
maybe a bit later, 78. And I was at Woolworths in Southport,
Yeah,
visiting my nan,
yeah.
and I saw the album of War of the Worlds by Jeff Wayne,
Jeff
and
White, yeah, yeah.
it's got the most amazing like artwork on it. It's this
What was going through your brain when you saw that cover?
what goes through my brain most of the time, like giant robots destroying people. It's like a big tripod thing, and like looming over loads of people in the sea,
Yeah,
and War of the Worlds written on top of it. It just looked incredible.
yeah,
So I kind of got it down, and it had like a gatefold sleeve, which I was like, "What?"
yeah.
Opened it, and inside a massive like painting of this saucer on the Horsell Common, and I was like, "Yes." So Pester Power worked, and my dad, who had quite a collection of records with my mum as well,
Yeah.
with sort of dark, scary classical records
Did he
mainly.
buy it willingly, or was there like a little battle?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was up at my nan's, we're on holiday.
Oh yeah,
Something to shut me up, and I was like transfixed by it.
yeah.
And so I got that back to my nan's house and put the headphones on and like blown away because it's a pretty impressive piece of music. I mean, especially the opening tracks, like pounding sort of space disco rock madness.
Exactly.
And yeah, and
The chance of them coming are a million to one, isn't it? Isn't it like?
yeah, absolutely. Yet they still come, and to this day they do. But they cover it up.
Does that record always remind you of Southport now? Is it or?
No. When I think of Southport, I think of loads and loads of old people
Yeah,
playing the penny falls on the pier, and it's pretty much the same if you watch any videos of people walking around Southport. But yeah, I mean, I think that same Christmas, I think I got a plastic Dalek, which was pretty amazing as well. So yeah, it's where my head was at in the 70s was like generally robots and space and stuff. So yeah, blew me away, and like I still love it. I played the Eve of War at the start of a set. Electro works at some point in time.
I
People
do
just like,
remember you playing it out, which
yeah,
because it was
yeah,
it was one of them records, like you said, like you bought it full price in the '70s, but that's like a classic. Virtually for it's one of them records that you see in virtually every charity shop for a quid or 2 quid.
yeah, absolutely. It's a good investment, you know.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah,
because it's sold, but the reason is, because it's sold,
I
well,
do remember
millions. Yeah.
listening to it and getting to the bit when David Essex started singing. I mean, like,
I didn't even remember David
yeah,
Essex was in
exactly.
it.
You skip that bit like everyone
Yeah.
else. But I wasn't a David Essex fan.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, that kind of like, it was weird because it wasn't so much the music that stimulated me; it was like the cover and the artwork. But the fact
Yeah.
that they were so kind of symbiotically linked, that the artwork reflected the record, the sounds, and it had this amazing sort of art book inside it. It was just like, yeah, it's really good. Like it's a concept album, it's prog, but
Exactly. Like, so you said it's 1978. So obviously you weren't buying like some like punk record in 1978 as an.
No, I mean the next record I got was actually quite funky,
Yeah.
because and also like a total left field from War of the Worlds, and at the time there was this, well, not very good, but funny kids TV series called Metal Mickey. It
Yeah.
was about a robot mouse, and I think it had Irene Handel in it as some
Yeah.
grandpa character.
And
Who,
the little kid was as well. One of the kids was
no,
He was Ricky out of EastEnders, Sid Owen.
No fucking way.
Do you not know that? All right, I'm going.
No way. Legendary Kana.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. No, the shots. All right. All right. I will cut in a picture of Sid Owen and Metal Mickey, unless I'm totally imagining it. I could be, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's true. He was in Metal Mickey, because
right. That's blown my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a 7-inch called Silicon Chip by Metal Mickey, and I've got the 7-inch of it off Discogs a while back.
All right.
And someone's actually put it up on SoundCloud somewhere, and I'll send you the link.
Okay.
And it's vocoded, yeah?
Yeah.
And it's this sort of strange, like electronic, like reggae calypso rhythm with sort of weird, sort of semi-patois vocoded mouse singing Silicon Chip over the top of it. And when I listened back to it, because I hadn't heard it for like 40 years, I was like, wow, talk about like the shape of things to come, like playing records with loads of dumb robot voices all over.
Well, that's the thing. Some people, say that Alleys of Your Mind by Cybertron is the first techno electro record. Metal Mickey was there obviously a few years before.
Yeah, Metal Mickey was there. He was big in Detroit.
Yeah. Electrifying Mojo used to play him, I heard.
Yeah.
Well, look, I got to admit, I was kind of, and again, it was something I sort of had to like pretend, I almost was like too embarrassed. But some of the early records I did quite like a bit of ELO, and like Mr. Blue Sky was an early one that I got, like on blue 7-inch vinyl.
Wow. Well, the coloured, novelty vinyl at the time was another big factor for me in record buying.
Yeah.
Because the next sort of phase for me for record buying was at school, because you're hearing what your mates are hearing.
Yeah.
Charts, isn't it? Because when you're about 10, don't know about
exactly.
The charts has been going for years and years before the 70s, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Because I remember WH Smiths was a big thing for me, and like they would have on the wall all the top 40. There'd be little like pigeonholes with the 7-inch singles in. So and I would go in. It was all like this is. I know this is two old people now speaking about buying music. It's not Spotify. But yeah, they'd have all the little cubby holes with like 47 inches, and you can go and buy the 7 inches. That's kind of what I remember. WH Smiths.
And once it went out the charts, it went onto the floor into a bin. Yeah. Same in Woolies. And you can pick them up. So my dad, if I was like, oh, I really want that, he'll go, yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see if it stays in the charts for very long. Do you know what I mean?
My local newsagent had used to have 7-inch records as well. Like they used to have like ex-jukebox ones. I don't know if you remember that little.
Yeah, one. With that,
They all have the big hole in the middle, and
the hole in the middle and that. Yeah,
you could buy them like obviously half price or something like that. That might even be where my Mr. Blue Sky was from, I think. So it's got a big.
Yeah, and you have flexi discs as well.
Yeah. Stuff. So do you remember 7-inch? So were you buying 7 inches? Do you remember the
loads of them? Yeah, because like I started going to junior school, which is the one before big school. Yeah. And at the time where I was growing up, it was like right at the end of punk, and everyone had got really stuck into the two-tone thing.
Yeah.
Because the fashion was like affordable-ish. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was.
Stay Press and Fred Perry's wasn't like mentally expensive. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And in our school, as long as you had white socks on, do you know what I mean, and a little Madness badge, you were all right.
Yeah.
And obviously, like we lived on an estate, and my best mate, his big brother was like 4 years older than us. Yeah. So he'd be schooling us in like, no, you don't want to be listening to Metal Mickey. You want to be listening to the Jam and like dance.
It is amazing actually. Yeah, some like older brothers, because I've got memories of like my mate's older brother. I'm talking 77 of or maybe even 76, going on about the Jam bands and and early Sex Pistols, and hearing about these punk gigs and just being, oh my god, that sounds amazing. And
totally, yeah. I mean, this guy, his older brother, without him, up until I was about 13, 14, he was pretty much dictating what we were listening to. Yeah. And he had really good taste. Yeah.
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, totally, it is. It's people you know, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the very first 7 inch I think I bought two on the same day from WH Smiths. One was the Smurfs, yeah, 7 inch, yeah, which is obviously like again that's quite an embarrassing one. And then the other one, which like again everyone at my school was into Grease, like
Oh yeah, I remember that.
so
Yeah,
it was like You're the One That I Want by Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta.
all
So
the girls were rocking rah-rah skirts and those things on their heads.
no, exactly. So yeah, I think I bought them both on the same shopping trip, and so yeah, those are my first two 7 inches. Because I remember everyone would go and watch Grease, and I remember my mum took me to go and see Saturday Night Fever because they reissued it.
That's such a hardcore movie.
They reissued it because of the success of Grease. Because I think
Oh, didn't they cut it though?
Well, I think there was like a cut version that basically
Yeah.
I would have been like, I don't know, 11 or 12 or younger. I can't remember. And yeah, I do remember like my mum being like, "Oh, this is and it was obviously cut, but it still was obviously was
yeah.
It wasn't quite.
Oh, John Travolta is such an asshole. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it's a classic. I mean, it's one of them classic films that obviously it's one of them that people sort of for a while like they take the piss out of because of all the dancing and the Bee Gees, but it's like a hardcore film about underground and culture in New York.
When I first rewatched it, like about 5 years ago, I was like, "Oh, right, I don't feel nice about this film at all." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because off that, I mean, this is a big influence for me. Was I used to have the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack album on cassette, and I used to listen to that on like a little proto Walkman in my.
But it completely bangs, doesn't it?
Mate, it's classic. It's like there's so many killer tunes on that. And again, like I said, there was a little while when it was like, oh, that's naff, or it's the Bee Gees, or it's like a joke sort of thing. Mate, it's loads of the classic disco productions are on there. And
the production is like highest class production. It's like, I mean, that's the thing about records. Those records back then, like War of the Worlds, how it was like everything about it. The production, the cutting, the mastering, the releasing of it was big money put into it. The quality of the sound was just so good. Do you know what I mean? There's so much investment into that.
Yeah.
So those records like Saturday Night Fever and whatnot, they just like became big, and like things like ABBA, it's just because it was just so slamming through the speakers. You know what I mean? With such high end production and things.
I remember my aunt got me one of them cassettes where it was like ABBA, but it wasn't ABBA, if you know what I mean. It was one of them all the cover versions, and I had a couple
of records which were like that, which were like chart 20 top 20 chart hitters, and on the cover of them they're like Sam Fox and Linda Lusardi and stuff, and they're like for a long while they were my favourite records that my mum and dad had.
I'm sure they were, mate.
I'll put the Linda Lusardi record on. This is like 9-year-old me, of course, but that's the kind of records that my mum would buy to like keep us quiet and be like, oh, this one's £1. It's got 20 songs on it. But anyway, I wasn't having that. I knew Madness. I like Madness, And Madness were obviously like churning out the 7 inches, right?
Yeah.
And they'd do them on picture discs, So I'd go out like down Woolies and whatever. I remember getting like driving in my car and House of Fun and all of that, all on picture disc and being like thinking, yes, I got the picture disc of it. But I was totally, I mean, the thing was like I didn't have a record player, but my sister, for some reason, who's a year younger than me, she had a record player.
Okay.
My mum and dad had a record player down in the lounge.
Right.
My sister wouldn't let me anywhere near hers. Yeah.
Right.
So I used to use my mum and dad's, and then my mum and dad's record player was this all-in-one thing. Yeah. Had this kind of pointed front on it. It looked a bit like Thunderbird 2,
Yeah.
Right. And it was made by a company called Ultra. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they must have been the people who like made like, I don't know, like oak cupboards or something. It weighed a ton. And like the treble and bass controls on it were awesome. Like the bass would just like really like rumble like the lounge. It only had one speaker, but back in the day, like, it's like what we're talking about, mastering quality and build quality. This is like, the Roberts radio we had in the kitchen used to belt it out, had a brilliant speaker on it. So like whatever I put on that record player down there, even though it was just like mono, it was really had presence on it,
Yeah.
And so I used to just like batter out my stuff downstairs, and And yeah, I had a tape deck, and my mate Jeff, who we lived in the States, so everyone was around each other's houses all the time. He had deck, and he had a tape to tape player as well. So yeah, we used to just tape stuff off the radio, tape the top 40 and stuff. And obviously his brother was buying records, and we'd get tape stuff off him and stuff. So there's quite a lot of tape trading going on.
Well, no, the taping of the records was like a massive sort of thing, wasn't it? Because obviously, you can only record so much, and it's get or even just recording off the radio.
Absolutely, we'd lend each other records at school and stuff. Like I said, it was everyone you knew lived within about 800 meters of each other, and that's like about 20 kids.
Well, actually, I was just going to say, we're talking about older brothers. I remember my mate, older brother, he was really into craft work, and this is like 78 or all that, and he had all the. So I remember that was the early thing, getting into this craft work, because my mate's older brother, and my mate Colin was listening to Kraftwerk, so I'd hear all this Kraftwerk, kind of before the model come out, which was, I guess, their big.
Oh God, I remember when the model came out.
Yeah.
And the record, on top of pop, so it was like nothing I'd eso heard before. It was just sounded so cold and so alien,
Yeah.
It really, this was school disco time, so I'm still at junior school then.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, it's like junior school was when Grease came out, when the model came out, and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the school discos would be like a game of two halves. All the girls would be dancing to the Grease songs. We'd always sat down, and then Madness would come on, and we'd jump around like lunatics. And then the girls would sit down, at the things. But the model came on, and everyone just kind of stood there going like, "Whoa,
fuck!
What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
Tainted Love was another bit of another weird one that was left field, because I suppose you're a bit older than me, so you'd actually appreciated Soft Cell for what they were, rather than me just being like, "What is this strangeness?"
Well, I mean, that's a whole long story, really, but they really opened my eyes to lots of sort of stuff, that first album. And because my mum worked up in Soho, I'd hear a lot of their tunes from that album just blasting out of all the sex shops walking around Soho. It really did feel part of the sleazy nightlife sort of thing, but maybe that's a more detailed story.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
another time. But
you growing up in London, and me growing up just outside of London, so much London-based music has it's kind of it's psychic kind of roots in where you're living, unlike where I'm growing up, Hemel Hempstead.
Yeah, because what were the shops where you were then? What were the shops where you were? Was it the Woolworths?
The main places obviously were Woolworths, Smiths, Our Price, and there was this little independent record shop up in the Old Town. I mean, when I was young, at Madness and whatnot times, it'd all just be Woolies and wherever had the cheapest 7-inches that I was after in the charts,
Yeah.
But I mean, as I went to secondary school and sort of had paper rounds and odd jobs and stuff, and I had some more spending power and whatever, I'd be going to Our Price then. But I mean, it's back to the older brothers thing. After Two Tone, we were in a bit of a drift musically. Phil, which is the guy, my mate's elder brother, he got bang, and we did as well, got bang into the early sort of synth pop sounds of Depeche Mode, Yazoo, Blancmange, and whatever.
Yeah.
But very quickly, right? I mean, and Cameo and stuff, yeah? But very quickly, he transitioned into electro with the street sound stuff, right? And we were like, oh, what's this? Because, like I said, we really like music with robot-y voices in it, yeah?
Yeah.
We love that generation. And Phil was old enough to go up to London, yeah? And he knew quite a bit. And he was like, oh, there's this radio show, which was obviously Mike Allen, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so we used to be able to get in Hemel really shit reception, but we were up high enough in the part of Hemel where I lived to get Capital, yeah?
Oh, wow. Okay.
He had his show on Capital Radio.
Oh, yeah? Wow. I didn't realise it stretched that far. Yeah,
it did, yeah. And I had a radio. I didn't have a deck at the time, but I had a radio, a little blue Woolworths radio. And I would put it up on my windowsill because that was the only place to get reception. Listen to Mike Allen, right? And really hope that Jeff, who lived around the corner, was taping it on his tape player, yeah? And I remember hearing things like Egyptian Lover and whatever, yeah? On this tiny little, tape deck. Anyway, I clearly remember that this day, Phil came back from London with this record, and it was Jam on it.
Wow.
By Nucleus, and he also had Renegades of Funk by Afrika Bambaataa. Yeah, that's the one with the cartoon cover?
No, it is. I remember buying that. I remember buying that when it came out. Yeah, the big blue cartoon cover. Yeah,
it was a double whammy because like the music of Nucleus, we were like, wow, this is wicked. Yeah, and this is around about the same kind of time as Herbie Hancock.
Yeah,
Rocket and stuff. Yeah, and I remember getting Rocket and stuff, and we were getting into some more instrumentally stuff as well, like in the UK charts, like Pig Bag and whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So he had this 12-inch of Nucleus, and we were like, this is weird. It's not an album. It plays at 45, and it was really loud and stuff. Yeah. And he had things like that and hip hop, bebop, and whatnot, because he was going up to London. I'd never really worked out where he was going. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because I was young. Yeah. But he'd go up to London, he'd come back, and he'd have a few 12-inches. And he had like, Egyptian Empire and things like that. And we were like, yeah, this is really, really cool. And obviously, breakdancing is the fashion at the time, And so my whole school is like learning how to like, do crazy legs and moonwalk. And in our gym, we're not, before like basketball, we're all trying to spin on our heads and shit,
Yeah.
And the fashion's going that way, you know what I mean? And everyone's getting a little bit more sort of, this is what, 83, 84, 85, 83, 84?
Yeah, I mean, I think the early stuff is 82, 83. It's sort of coming through.
Yeah, but it was we're like Hemmel's a bit behind. It was definitely It's 84 because I went to secondary school in 83.
Yeah.
So it'd been 84. I can remember 83 was like Depeche Mode kind of things for us. It'd have been 84 that we were very much like Phil wasn't like some underground character. Yeah. He was just like, a bit of a kind of fashionable kid, and so,
but just in touch with what's going on. I guess that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and
beyond the charts, maybe.
Yeah, we would, it was when we got done for graphing the estate, it was like obvious who it was. It was us, yeah? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
because you wrote your name in big letters or like.
Yeah. So, but again, in Hemel, there wasn't a dearth of sort of vinyl to buy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Of like, the early hip hop and whatnot, Boogie Down Productions and stuff. They were all names and stuff that we had on tape, yeah? But it wasn't really a vinyl thing, for us. And obviously, you're growing up at the same time. And so fashion when you're a kid just changes like the breeze,
Yeah.
And when I got to about 14, 15, my record collection is like totally random. I'm buying things that I like rather than following anything. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I finally got a proper deck in about 85, yeah, let's say 85. And it was like, quite a decent record player with a couple of speakers, a music system type thing. And at the same time as that, sort of started getting more out of the hip hoppy, electro-y breakdance thing and more into sort of being a sort of grubby, starting to smoke a few fags, drop out kind of early teenager, yeah? And starting to, get into a bit more sort of Aggie kind of music. And I remember, again, it was a kind of question of like an aesthetic mattering a little bit more than the music, right? And being, again, I think it was down at WH Smiths, seeing, and at the time I was just like really into, you go into WH Smiths, you look at the posters and stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
And they'd have all these like heavy metal posters. And I always remember seeing these Iron Maiden posters and being like blown away by the artwork on them, yeah? And there was this amazing like looking like Iron Maiden gatefold sleeve double album, which was called Live After Death. And it was just amazing artwork, yeah? And at the time, like 6'6", like Number of the Beast, Iron Maiden was in the charts. And I just thought it was just like really dramatic and really funny,
Yeah.
And obviously you're at school and there's metalers at school, yeah? There's like a crew of sort of metaler punky types, in the sixth form or the fifth year. And like they seem to be having more fun than most people, And a couple of kids in my year were like into it already kind of thing. So it sort of drifted quite quickly out of like, and there's also a transitional phase within hip hop. I remember buying like License to Ill, yeah, and the first couple. Was it the second Public Enemy album? Was it?
That's a bit later. I mean, I just want to say something about the electro scene because what I remember in South London then is like, and this is when I'm talking about 82, 83. There was massive jazz funk scene like where I was, like Southeast London, like Abbey Wood, Plumstead, Woolwich.
Yeah, that was a big thing. 83, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was massive. Like this, and like when the electro thing come out, and like I don't know why, but like there's a lot of Asian kids like where I grew up, like Plumstead's quite Indian, Pakistani immigrant, and like the Asian kids, they really got into electro. I don't know why, but anyway, there was a real, if you like, you had the soul boys who were into like the jazz funk. There was a real hatred of the electro stuff because they actually were calling it like, oh, that's not real music, it's robot music. And there was this whole thing of like, yeah, we like the proper music. It was like the first time I started hearing that sort of thing of like, if you like, yeah, they really hated the electro because it was drum machines, it was vocoders.
They preferred their acoustic folk jazz funk. Yeah,
they preferred level 42 in a Ford Escort.
Yeah. They preferred their basses slung up below their chins.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love loads of like mad early 80s jazz funk. There's some amazing classics, but
for sure.
But it was definitely like that was almost, they looked down on the electro as like, it almost is a bit like years later with the hardcore rave where suddenly people are like, oh, that's kiddie music, and then we like the proper music where we can go to nice clubs and wear nice clothes and drive in our nice cars with our,
absolutely,
so yeah, it was almost like the electro was a bit dirty and it was a bit seen as, whereas I just thought it sounded like the future, you know what I mean?
It just sounded like the time, innit? It's like 84's Cold War, innit? It's like it had that, and that's why we liked it, because it had that sort of dystopian sci-fi edge to it, Level 42 was all sort of like, dumb love songs and slappy basses and whatnot,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, funny you should say that about Asian kids, because like there was a Sikh kid in my year and in the first year, and he had a little lapel badge that just said jazz funk on it. Yeah. And I was like, what's jazz funk? He was like, it's music, mate. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And that was my question asked. I didn't really know what he was talking about. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it's funny you should say that. But yeah, it's so yeah, the metal thing sort of was also coincided with my first sort of, having proper like odd jobs and dosh and whatnot.
From Metal Mickey to metal could be your early years.
Yeah, so I started actually buying a lot more vinyl, and obviously there was quite a few of us at school into it. So it'd be like, oh, you get this one, I'll get that one, kind of thing. We'd swap records and trade and stuff. But that got quite quickly underground, So I got into the more sort of thrashy, extreme, like Napalm Death, because Napalm Death formed around this time, and I was starting to become more sort of, I guess, sort of politically conscious is a way of putting it, but just socially aware as a person,
Yeah.
And so songs about sort of devil worshipping and stuff were just a bit sort of lame, and I sort of, and got into skateboarding as well, like properly, because just really a sense of sort of freedom in a really kind of crap place, and was sort of really like this thing that there was this magazine called Thrasher magazine, which was like this sort of underground
classic
American skate magazine, which this skate shop in St Albans used to get, and we'd get copies of that and add like record reviews and of all these underground like New York and like LA and San Francisco punk bands and whatnot, and just it was a whole vibe. And that was like, my first sort of, when I first started going to gigs and stuff. And that's when my first sort of forays up to London were for buying records, because we were really lucky that our Price and Hemel, the staff there were all really cool. They were all really young local people, right?
Yeah.
They got quite a lot of, say over what they actually stocked. Yeah. So we had a really, really good sort of punk, indie, new wave sort of section, in our Price. And this one geezer, Adam, who used to work there, was like, proper. He was in a thrash band, and he knew his stuff, and he really sort of liked the fact that we were kind of like customers. Do you know what I mean? And they'd be like, you know, oh, you want to hear
that's
this?
a good record shop like assistant,
Yeah.
isn't it? Someone who's is like, yeah, they're going to sell you the latest chart stuff, but they've got some other stuff, and it's like,
Yeah,
you know, check this shit out. You probably ain't heard this, and you're like,
totally.
wow.
You know, I got, you know, I was buying like, I was introduced to people like Crass and Rudimentary Peni and Subhumans, all through this one bloke. Yeah, you know what I mean. And you know, and so that was really a real advantage because he really knew his stuff, you know. And so he started going up to London because at the time there was this like, you know, cheap way of getting up to London from Hemel if you were a kid.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, which involved just like getting a thing called a permit to travel. Yeah, which meant that the ticket machine was broken or something.
Right.
And you intended to pay.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway,
hopefully the British Transport Police are listening. They'll go back and charge you 40 years later. Yeah.
Up to Euston, walk down Tottenham Court Road.
Yeah.
Go, because we were looking in whatever magazine, Kerrang or something. It was like there was a record shop called Shades, which is in St Anne's Court Road in Soho, you know, just off Wardour Street.
Yeah.
And they stocked like imports and sort of loads of independent sort of like labels and stuff. So it was the only place you could go to get records by bands like Misfits and Cro-Mags and Agnostic Front and all of these New York and, you know, hardcore bands, which were, you know. So it was going up there, and that was sort of opened up London to me as a sort of place that I wasn't just going up with my mum and dad to go to some museum or something, you know.
It's a big thing when you go up on your own, isn't it? I mean, because one thing I should just mention as well is like just for my mum as well, like she was on the jazz scene, so I was exposed. Like a good friend of hers who was kind of like my uncle growing up, he worked at a shop called Dobell's, which is like really big early jazz and blues shop. So yeah, my early memories are going up to Soho, and then when I could finally go up on my own and start going into record stores, that kind of was like a big sort of thing, really.
Totally, you grow up sort of getting taller behind the counter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, literally and figuratively. You know, it's like, you know, and all the stuff you see on the way to the record shop.
So yeah, one of my early memories going up to Soho record shopping is when I used to go up. My mate Colin, I talked about his brother was into Kraftwerk and he's playing all that sort of stuff at the end of the 70s. And but yeah, we started hearing like this electro stuff, and started going up to Soho because there was a few specialist record shops up there. We could buy these imports. I know you talked about you know, your mate's brother bringing this stuff back from London to Hemel, and like there was a couple of places really we used to go, and one of them was Groove Records in Greek Street. It's quite a legendary shop in the electro and early hip hop community because they got some of the really early imports there. And I'd go up there with Colin normally on a Saturday, and I remember like because like the imports were like £5 for like an import 12-inch,
double the price of what you'd be paying.
Well, exactly. I think like a 12-inch, and I'm talking like 83, 84 to into 85 maybe.
Quid, yeah.
Well, I think it was $1.99 even. $1.99 to $2.49 was the price.
Yeah, no, you are right. Yeah, I mean albums.
So like I remember it was at least double the price of a UK.
Well, there's Misfits ones I was saying I was getting. They were like 12 quid for an import album, 13 quid, which was mega money for me. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So basically, like we obviously didn't have loads of cash, and we'd go up there, and normally we could either buy one. You know, I might, if I was lucky, I had a tenner in my pocket if I'd saved up the money somehow. You know, we'd buy 2 records each, and quite a lot of the time we would just buy different ones for the exact reason you said before, that we go up. You know, we'd go home and tape them, and I've still got some tapes I can see now that I think I did from that time of these like electro records.
How many times would you get back and you'd be like, oh, I want the one he bought more in the end? Do you know what I mean?
Well, exactly. Well, this is the thing. Like for years, I had that. There were certain records that he got that I didn't get, because this was the other thing. Like in Groove, they would get sometimes 10 or 20 copies of this record, and they would kind of be like, they were very special. The only copies, or there wouldn't be more than 50 of these records in the whole country. But if you didn't get them on that Saturday, and were quick enough, then they disappeared the following week. And for years, I couldn't find these records, and until I actually went and lived in America at the end of the 80s, lived in New York, I started able to find these records. But basically, you couldn't find them in this country. Pre-Discogs, pre the internet, some of these records were like gold dust. So, yeah, like I said, there were certain records that Colin got that for years, Hip Hop on Wax Volume 2 by DJ Red Alert. I wanted that record for like 15 years, and now I can buy a copy on Discogs for like 20 quid. I don't think it's a super rare record, but for someone who lived in London, there was probably about 20 copies in the whole country.
Yeah, I think I picked my copy up of that at Rat Records in about 2004 for about £4.
Do you know what? I actually do remember when you got that, actually, because I remember that was one of them records that I was always looking for in like secondhand record stores, because it's got this really mad red and white cover, and like it never turned up, But yeah, it was there, and there was also another one called Hitman Records, which I actually bought, Hip Hop and Wax Volume 1 by Chuck Chill out there, and that was on the corner of Brewer Street and Lexington, and now it's like an NCP car park or something, or maybe it's a hairdresser's that's built into the car. It's some weird sort of thing. But yeah, that was briefly selling all the freshest sort of import records.
How long was Hitman Records going for then?
It was only like a year or two. It wasn't, it's not really.
I remember the name, but it's probably just me misremembering.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a short-lived sort of record store, whereas Groove went for about 3 or 4 years, maybe a bit longer than that. What people
was so back in the sort of early 80s, was Sister Ray and Selector Disc open then?
No, they weren't there.
I remember Sister Ray being open. Like,
I don't think Sister Ray was there until the 90s, but like,
no, it was open. It was open well before then.
Really? I mean, the Tape Exchange, that they were open in the 80s. I know.
Oh, the Tape Exchange,
the ones on Berwick Street. But yeah, you had Hitman and Groove, and I guess the other thing I would say about the American the import records that I was buying then, they were different than the UK records, as in normally the vinyl was thicker. They come in that thick cardboard sleeve. A lot of times they'd be shrink wrapped with like a little import sticker on. So there was just something that was just a lot cooler about buying the import records than the records that I would buy, for instance, in TW Records, which was one of my local record store in Plumstead High Street that I'd get a lot of records from as well.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's before there wasn't really much in the way of like home produced like music of that style. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like a question of getting promos of these things or anything like the dance music dynamic that evolved, is it?
No.
And it's not like Rare Groove where you're going through crate digging, because this is new stuff you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I will say in South London, there was, like I said, there was that jazz funk sort of scene. And so even some of the local stores, even like TW Records in Plumstead, was like a little sort of shop. They would get the odd little import record. Again, I think like you said, because they had people in there who were knowledgeable sort of staff, and because in that area, it's quite a scene for them records. So they knew if they got a few of these import, black music, jazz funk sort of records, they were selling them. But still, it was few and far between getting stuff in them sort of stores.
It's true about knowledgeable stuff, because I failed the entrance exam for Our Price. So I thought I'd get a job down Our Price. I love records, and it's all the questions were about like bands and stuff I had no idea about whatsoever. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, well, do you know, one of my proudest things was I actually got a job at the Record at Tape Exchange in Notting Hill. And I did their quiz, which was the owner, who was quite legendary, the owner there. And I think I got something like 19 out of 20 on their questions. Like, to me, that was better than, my O levels that I got. And I answered all these questions about obscure records. And I actually got a job working there for about a week or two. And yeah, it was a long story, but I couldn't keep working after that.
You probably couldn't have got a job at Our Price, though, unless you knew about Huey Lewis and News, mate.
No, for sure. So yeah, you were going into Soho as well there from Hemel, just from
Yeah, but I mean, like record and tape exchange. Now you mentioned it was like sort of part of the next phase of my record buying because like my tastes were changing all the time. You know what I mean? And the whole sort of punk thrashy thing just generally drifted into sort of more just interesting indie territory. So like more industrial kind of stuff. Bands like Einstürzenden, Neubauten, and
well done.
Front 242 and that kind of stuff. And I was going up to Camden quite, because Camden's North London, Hemel's North London. It's just like easy to get to. One stop from Euston, you could flit up there in a couple, be there in 45 minutes from Hemel. And Camden in the 80s was wicked. Yeah, I mean the market was excellent.
I used to love Camden. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you could go up there, you could eat really well, get a book from Compendium, get a record and whatever, and like for 20 quid. Do you know what I mean? And come home, And so I discovered what was it? What was that record shop called? Rhythm Records, just on the bridge.
Yeah, by the canal. Yeah.
Yeah, which had a basement, which had like, a really kind of like, I know it had loads of dance music down there because I was hearing it coming out speakers and stuff. But I was kind of ignorant to the whole sort of acid house wave of like the early electronic music. I was more into the music that it influenced in a way,
Yeah.
So so when bands like Front 242, which I'd have been listening to, fully kind of embraced that whole techno thing anyway, so their sounds were getting more in that direction. So I was like, I'd be going up to that, but that's when I discovered the exchange, because obviously paying less for stuff, is always the goal. Do you know what I mean? And also, like you said, like a lot of records, they came and went really fast. So a band that I'd sort of tried to get interested in, like Psychic TV or whatever, well, where am I going to get a copy of Dream's Death Suite?
Yeah,
but not from like Virgin or HMV, innit? So I remember buying.
You say that I used to buy loads of Psychic TV records
but
Virgin
closer
Records.
to the time that actually got released.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking for like Dreams Death Suite, which is what, from like 82 or something.
Yeah.
In 1990, 1989. Yeah. I ended up paying like 20 quid for it. It's like I was telling you about it, getting used to spending money on things you wanted. Yeah. I mean, then again, I think, it's 20 quid for that. I mean, how much is it worth now? I mean, I remember like buying, Trout Mask Replica by Captain Beefheart back about, and then on like, vinyl and double pack, and it's worth absolute fortune now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, your outlay comes back to you in the end if you're interested in the material value of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
But that's when I first really got into like the idea of like crate digging, I mean, digging through loads of vinyl, and then that's when you come upon releases by bands that you didn't know they'd put out and stuff, and there wouldn't be that distinction between what was an import and what wasn't, because it just ended up at the exchange with a price, So it was like opening a door of like history, really, going to the exchange. And there was another really good second-hand record shop in Camden, just over where the Parkway Cinema used to be.
Yeah,
on that little connective road up there, and there was obviously all the stalls on the market.
Actually, one thing I got to add in there, like just about that era, is maybe the end of the 80s was because I was I guess different for me living in London. I was more into the rare groove and funk scene as and I was into the for a start I used to go to Rough Trade on West London. That was like a big. I was buying loads of punk and new wave, and obviously they had all like mad electronica as well.
Yeah.
But the one in Camden I used to go as well was like Soul to Soul used to have a record store there. And I was going to all their sort of parties in like 86 or something. And like they would have just loads of like rare groove and funk and, tunes in there that, I was, starting to learn about. And they would also have a lot of bootlegs in there, like the early bootlegs that people like Cold Cut and even people before Cold Cut, just the mashups of loads of James Brown sort of breaks and old sort of early sort of hip hop sort of mashups. All that sort of stuff started coming through a lot of them sort of shops.
You were DJing at this time, isn't it?
I'd started DJing by then. I was playing all sorts of stuff.
This is just coming up to the time when I'm sort of, having a record collection. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And stuff. So when it came to get decks, like not in the too far distant future, I mean, I had some stuff that was transmutable to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Soho and Camden were really my stomping grounds for vinyl. But like I say, I did go out to Rough Trade a few times because Notting Hill was another sort of good weekend destination because they had the exchange there as well that you said you worked at. But they had all the exchanges there, didn't they? The clothing and stuff. So you could go up there and get kind of books and movies. They had the movie exchange with those mad old posters and stuff in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do the whole market and meet some dodgy rasta down the market and go home happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was
if you're lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time was, but it was just a vibe like Camden was just like a place where you just go meet loads of different people in a day just by being sat around by the canal. Do you know what I mean? And there was like a guy who I started to clock selling tapes outside the record and tape exchange.
Yeah.
Banging out what I thought, well, I quite like this music, and it turned out to be sort of early sort of 90s, like, post acid house sort of techno and rave. Yeah. So I was getting sort of more drawn towards that scene. And then I left school, and then it was time to move to London to get to the source of all this sort of goodness that I'd been dipping my toe into most weekends for like the last 3 or 4 years beforehand.
Yeah.
And so I suppose that's for the next phase of the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's stop it there for the moment. But yeah, let's come back next time and let's just dig into some of the shops of the 90s because that's a whole other story, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I get my decks and I get on the mission.